My guest today is Ben Hodges, General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. forces in Europe. Good morning.
Good morning.
General, we have many issues in the world. War with Iran, talks between U.S. and China, but I want to start with the presence of U.S. troops in Europe. United States are withdrawing a few thousand troops from Germany. What is the significance of this decision?
Well, I don't know enough yet about the whole plan to make a good judgment. The announcement of 5,000 troops coming out of Germany was not put within the context, or it was not explained within a broader strategic context of how this is going to improve American security or protect our interests. It sounded more like petty retribution against the German Bundeskanzler for criticism he made about President Trump and Iran. So, in the absence of the strategic context, it's hard to know the implications. And of course, so there's speculation then that these soldiers from Germany might go to Poland, they might go to Romania, or they might go back to the States. At least if they were to stay in Europe, I would be less concerned, but we don't know that. And then, of course, we just heard this morning or yesterday about the cancellation of a deployment of an armor brigade that was supposed to come to Poland. But, this caught everybody by surprise. So we still don't understand the strategic context. And I think because we're not doing a good job of communicating with our allies, we're not even doing a good job of communicating with our own people. It really destroys trust that allies and soldiers should have in the Department of Defense.
Yes, in Poland we are very concerned about this, that the United States under Trump administration is no longer a reliable ally.
Well, and the big danger of this, of course, is that Vladimir Putin, may perceive that somehow the United States is not committed to security in Europe, and that raises the risk of a terrible decision by the Russians. So, of course, the administration, to be fair, last year issued the new national security strategy, and in it they talked about more and more that American security forces are going to have to be deployed to protect the homeland and over to the Indo-Pacific region, and that our European allies would have to shoulder more of the responsibility. So, I mean, nobody should be surprised in any European capital that U.S. presence is decreasing. I just really regret the way that these various decisions are being made and executed. I mean, even the brigade that was supposed to come to Poland, the Secretary of the Army and the acting chief of the Army just did testimony with Congress a couple of days ago, and they did not even mention this. So I'm not sure how much of this is happening at the Secretary of Defense level without the Army even being fully in the loop. I don't know. This is not a normal sort of process.
What about the war with Iran? What would be the most serious consequences of this for the United States, for the world, and for Europe?
Well, of course, we're in a mess there. The administration, I think, did not do a good job of laying out the strategic objectives. There were different justifications that were given over the weeks for why we want to do this, but none of them was clearly defined as a strategic objective, and they've changed, and now we're in a situation where the Iranians, despite suffering enormous damage to their military capability, they still are able to stop anything going through the strait. So the Pentagon brags about how many Iranian vessels have been sunk and all the damage that's been done to Iranian forces, but that's not relevant to the strategic end state because the Iranians still control the strait. They still have their highly enriched uranium. The regime is still in power. So I think we're in a pretty bad situation of our own making. So I think the administration has some options. Number one, they can keep doing what they're doing, which is to maintain a blockade on Iran and try to put economic pressure on the IRGC in hopes that they will finally crack. So that's one. Although the Iranians, I think, they act as if they think they have more time than the U.S. does, and so it really does come down to which side blinks first, the U.S. or the Iranian side. The other option, of course, is to say, okay, we won. We destroyed all this Iranian equipment and then leave. But of course, that would be a humiliating disaster for the U.S. because it would show that you'd be telling the whole world that we made a colossal mistake and that we were stopped by Iran. So that seems unlikely. And then a third course of action is to is the large scale, put troops on the ground. I mean, thousands of troops would be required to hold open the Strait of Hormuz to allow ships to come through. I think that would be a disaster, and I'm pretty sure the president does not want to put boots on the ground, especially in a U.S. election year. Perhaps he may get China to put pressure on Iran. I think this is probably on the agenda for their summit this week in Beijing, but I haven't heard anything coming out of that about this topic yet.
Donald Trump is in China right now. He said that is one of the greatest privileges for him, and he took the wealthiest businessman from America. Xi Jinping, the China side, said that Taiwan is the most important issue for them. Do you think that Trump may withdraw from Taiwan in some way?
This will be. I think this is what a lot of people are concerned about, is that the president, he's there. He wants to get some kind of big deal with Beijing, and that he might try to offer up canceling American support for Taiwan, or whether it's arms packages or anything else, in return for some big economic deal that he could sell as a victory, and also in return for China promising to get Iran to open the strait. I don't know, but I think a lot of people are very concerned because the president has a preference for big deals and transactions more so than defending any kind of principles. And so I think people are not just people in Taiwan, but people in Congress and in the U.S. Are concerned that he might do that. Well, we'll see when this summit ends. I guess tonight or tomorrow. We'll probably know more about what decisions or agreements may have been made, or what next steps are. If I was Taiwan, I'd be a little worried.
In connection to Iran, this war with Iran, can it maybe Russia and China maybe exploit this conflict and weaken the U.S. position?
Well, we're weakening ourselves, of course. I mean, we have used up so much of our critical ammunition. You've got a big part of the Navy is deployed there. I mean, this costs money, and it's wear and tear on our ships and crews and aircraft. Our allies in the region are concerned. They're starting to look to Ukraine and other places to help defend them. They're not sure that the U.S. is going to even stick around. And of course, the Israelis, you don't hear much mention of Israel anymore. But the Israelis, I think, probably have different expectations and a timeline for all of this than maybe the Trump administration. I mean, for the Israelis, that what they see is probably a once in a generation opportunity to finally destroy the IRGC and eliminate Hezbollah. So they will, you know, they'll be watching very closely to see what does the U.S. do, and at what point does the U.S. begin to signal that it's moving away. If it does, I don't know of this. I imagine there are pretty intensive conversations and intelligence sharing and things going on between the U.S. and Israel that are not out in public, and of course they shouldn't be in public. But Israel is also under a lot of pressure from the EU for what they're doing with these illegal settlements and other Netanyahu policies. China, I think, is most interested when it comes to this situation in the Strait. Of course, China wants to get oil flowing again. It depends as much as anybody on oil from the Persian Gulf, and so this is not something that they can put up with indefinitely. Russia, of course, is supporting Iran, and this is the part that I don't understand. Russia supports Iran with intelligence and with equipment capabilities that are used against Americans, and yet the president does not put pressure on Russia. He only puts pressure on Ukraine, and so none of this is making any sense to me from a strategic standpoint. China, of course, is looks to Russia as another source of oil and gas, but I don't know that I don't know how long that can go on because Ukraine is doing such a good job of destroying Russia's oil and gas export infrastructure, targeting refineries, targeting shadow fleet vessels. So that's not going to be a reliable source either.
Speaking of Ukraine, do you see in recent months some change on the front?
Yeah, I'm more optimistic about Ukraine now than I've been in a long time because they clearly have stopped Russia. I mean, it's obvious that there's no way that Russia can defeat Ukraine. 5 months in a row of losing more people than they're able to bring into the military, and you don't see it getting any better. The Ukrainians have figured out how to stop Russian ground operations. Now, they still have not been able to completely stop Russia's air and missile attacks and drone attacks against Ukrainian cities. That happens almost every night. So they're able to stop a large percentage of these things, but there's still 10, 15% that get through and kill innocent people. So I think Ukraine is continuing to work on long-range weapons to destroy the factories that make Shahed drones and ballistic missiles, but they still need help on their air and missile defense. But because of Ukraine's ability to destroy Russia's oil and gas infrastructure, I think the momentum in this war has shifted, and that Russia is on the back foot. Um, so we'll see. It's not going to end this year, I'm sure, but it feels to me that we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning.
The Russian parliament gave the President Putin a right to use soldiers abroad to defend, as they say, for example, to defend Russians in foreign countries. He doesn't have to ask parliament. It's seen as a move preparing to attack maybe another country if they can't. Ukraine, maybe a smaller country. We don't know, of course. But do you think that it's possible that Russia will go somewhere else, some smaller country, or maybe a NATO country?
Yeah, I don't know if this is really significant. I mean, they didn't. The Russians went into Georgia without this permission. They went into Ukraine without this permission. So I think this is a little bit of classic Russian creating a headline, get people worried, start thinking, oh my God, they might invade somebody else when, they do it anyway. I think the fact that they had to ask for help to do their stupid Red Square parade tells you more about the situation in Russia than some legislation here, which seems to me to be largely symbolic. What's really going to matter is if Russia decides they have to mobilize people in Moscow and St. Petersburg to fill out the ranks to meet their manpower requirements, because then you start getting the sons of oligarchs, and you start getting the sons of the wealthy, and people who so far have not been touched by this war. When they do that, then I'll believe they're serious about doing something else. But right now, they obviously want to avoid that because they know it would be extremely unpopular domestically. Um, So that's what I would be watching. And this is why Europe has to help make sure that Ukraine defeats Russia. This is the best way to make sure that Russia does not invade another country in addition to Ukraine, is by helping Ukraine defeat Russia. Then they don't have the ability. Russia won't have the ability to go into Poland or Lithuania or anywhere else.
What single strategic decision would you most like to see European leaders make today?
For European leaders to say that it is our objective, it is our priority that Ukraine defeats Russia, wins the war, and pushes them back to the 1991 borders. And we're going to do everything necessary to make that possible. That, to me, is the most important strategic decision that European leaders could make. We should have done it years ago. We failed to do it. But now is the time to do that. That would do so much to solve European security problems for generations.
And last issue, I want to ask about the domestic situation in the US. Do you think it's getting better or worse, the political and social divisions?
Well, of course, this is an election year. What we call the midterm elections, where every member of Congress, not the president, but every member of Congress is up for reelection, and 1/3 of all the senators are up for reelection. And so Republicans are very anxious about the very, very poor, low approval ratings that Mr. Trump has. I mean, it's like below 30%. That's unbelievable. And the price of gasoline is so high, inflation is so high. You've got a war going on against Iran that with no obvious way out of it. So I think you're starting to see some anxiety on the Republican side in the U.S. And here we are approaching the summer when families normally take summer holiday, they take a long trip, and they're going to be paying almost $5 for a gallon of gas. I mean, in the U.S., that is amazingly high, and everybody will see it if they're out on the road with their family on holiday. And that, people, when people vote, they vote because of what their pocketbook, what's their own family budgets. And I think this should be a disastrous election for the Republicans. But of course, the Republicans know this. And so I think you're going to see, we already see many efforts to disrupt the elections, to reduce the turnout, to do everything they can to avoid getting crushed in these midterm elections. So we'll see. This is going to be a hell of a year in American politics.
Yes, and in the world politics probably as well. As I said, we're very concerned about this relations between the United States and Poland, especially after recent events when our former Minister of Justice, who is now suspected of leading an organized criminal group and basically stealing taxpayers' money, who fled to Hungary, and now after the election change of authorities in Hungary, he fled to the United States. So, and he was, I don't know, accepted there apparently. So, is it a sign that Trump administration may be against the current government in Poland?
Yeah, I don't know that. I'd be speculating on that, but the Trump administration, has generally embraced, people that were illiberal, like Orban, people like that. So it doesn't surprise me that this gentleman would want to get to the U.S. and would be accepted by the administration. So, but I don't. I'm not going to speculate on what the Trump administration thinks about the current Polish government. Polish people, have done everything that they could. Poland has done everything it could to meet its security and defense obligations. Polish soldiers are among the best in the world. I always loved serving with, fighting with, and training with Polish armed forces. So that's the main thing. Poland and the rest of our European allies need to focus on what's best for them and not spend so much time worrying about what the U.S. is going to do.
General, thank you very much for this conversation, for your insight. Our guest was General Ben Hodges, former commander of U.S. forces in Europe. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.